Governor Erdem, and distinguished guests, thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this summit. Most emerging economies were able to manage the effects of the financial crisis in the advanced economies that has continued to evolve in this recent 5 years. And emerging economies such as ours have become the anchor to global growth during these 5 years. With the commencement of the unconventional policies, we then became the recipient of massive global liquidity that has come into our financial systems. Most of us have experienced appreciation in our exchange rates, rising asset prices, strong economic activity. And most central banks responded with measures to rein in these excesses and build-up of global imbalances. Let me touch on two issues in my very brief remarks. Unfortunately, I have to catch a flight. I was supposed to be part of a panel chaired by our governor, and I have to catch a flight at 3 o'clock. So I've been invited just to make my opening remarks of the panel, and then I have to leave. And I'm going to touch on two of the issues that have emerged in this environment. And the two issues is, how will emerging economies survive or manage this period when the global liquidity starts to be withdrawn, with the tapering off of the quantitative easing and the unwinding of these massive inflows into our financial systems? Will we be able to sustain the growth? And the second point that I want to touch on briefly is, we saw your Deputy Prime Minister talk about evolving Turkey into an international financial center. Well, in Malaysia, where I come from, we also have aspirations to be an international Islamic financial center. What is our motivation, and what are the benefits of having such a financial center? So, let me start with the issue that is before us. Is it possible for emerging economies to grow during this period of unwinding of the market interventions in the quantitative easing? Well, following the forward guidance that is being issued, that is, several of the advanced economies have already issued what their future policy, what their conditional promise, that is what forward guidance is, a conditional promise. That means if growth takes place, if unemployment falls, then we will start the withdrawing. So following this forward guidance that has been issued, before the actual unwinding has taken place, the effects is already felt by us. The sharp increase in financial market volatility is already happening across the international financial system, including in the emerging economies. So when the unwinding actually takes place and happens, these effects will be experienced again. Therefore, we need to brace ourselves for multiple repercussions. Let me highlight why there is every reason to expect emerging economies to be well positioned to continue to grow. And especially from where I come from, let me speak on behalf of Asia. In our assessment, Asia will continue to be able to grow. Many of us have restructured our economies to be more balanced, and this is where the payoff is. We were, in Asia, most of us, export-led economies, but now we are more domestic-driven economies. In other words, domestic demand, consumption demand, investment activity, especially driven by the private sector. And this is what is mentioned also by your Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, that he mentioned the role of the private sector is important in driving growth. Most of us in emerging economies, and certainly in Asia, have resilient financial systems. After the Asian financial crisis, we rebuilt and strengthened our financial systems. And financial stability has been preserved throughout this global financial crisis since 2007. We have never been at the epicenter of this financial crisis. And what does it mean? That financial intermediation was never disrupted. During this period, financial markets continued to function, and there was always confidence in the financial system. This has allowed our financial systems to support our economy. In other words, there was never a disruption in credit growth. Our financial markets and financial systems also are more developed and more able to intermediate funds more effectively and efficiently. The other factors that support our conviction that we are going to continue to grow is our macroeconomic fundamentals in Asia. Inflation is low, unemployment is low. For example, in Malaysia, it's 3%. Savings rate is high. We have surplus savings in our economies. Debt levels are contained, and fiscal sustainability, some of us are addressing this. Others are in a better position. In addition, we still have the policy space. We have the flexibility of policy, monetary policy, fiscal policy, and other pro-growth policies. We are not restricted by rigidities of based on ideologies and so on. I suppose one would describe the policy as pragmatic, just like Turkey has implemented policies that generate growth and policies that reduce unemployment, especially for the young people, to retrain them and so on. There are many things that we can do for the SMEs, small and medium-scale businesses. All this help us to ensure our growth prospects. And finally, in Asia, Asia is becoming more cohesive. In Asia, we have 4 large countries: Japan, Korea, and then China and India. And then where I come from, we don't get so known, so I'm going to mention it, that we have 10 countries which form part of ASEAN. And we believe that we are a force to be reckoned with. There are 600 million people in ASEAN with a relatively good size of domestic demand. So we represent a major market in Asia with 600 million people. Therefore, now conscious effort to become more integrated. And as a result of this integration, we believe that we strengthen our resilience collectively. But despite all these positive elements, we cannot rule out that any severe shock, external shock, will set us back. However, I would like to highlight one very important point, one very important element that most emerging markets have, and certainly in Asia. That is economic flexibility. We have seen how in Europe and the United States, and even in the United Kingdom, where certain structural rigidities give inflexibilities to adjust. Well, in Asia, we have demonstrated time and again how our economic flexibility have brought us rapidly out of a crisis. In the 60s, when the commodities prices plummeted. In the 80s, where we had twin deficits, most of us. And in the 1990s, when we had the Asian financial crisis, we were able to come out with it within 1 year. Others, including the IMF, said it would be a lost decade for us. But we managed to emerge with a V-shaped recovery. I believe that if we are set back in this current environment because we cannot rule out what is in store for us, we can prepare ourselves, reduce our degree of vulnerabilities, strengthen our resilience, but in the event that it does happen, we are also ready positioned to manage it and come out of it quickly. So we have demonstrated each time that we were able to experience a sharp rebound, and we will do it again. Well, let me turn very briefly now to what are the benefits of being a financial center and what is our motivation for wanting to be an international Islamic financial center. Well, first of all, when we look at the financial sector, what is the purpose of the financial sector? The purpose of the financial sector is to serve the real economy. And therefore, as a more developed and more connected financial sector, it will be better able to serve not only the domestic economy, but facilitate cross-border trade and investment. This is the future. And then having scale will lower cost of financial intermediation, having a more liberalized financial system that we have realized when we opened it up to others to participate in our financial system. There's a greater diversity of products, financial products and services that serves our economy. And most important of internationalizing our financial system. Before, it was very domestic-centric. Now, as we internationalize our financial system and become more connected with the rest of the world, it is important. This allows us to become more connected financially and for the economy as well. In the future, we believe that there will be a network of financial systems that will be connected. This network will represent a channel through which we can facilitate financial and trade flows. We want to be part of that network. Let me conclude my remarks. We believe that the world is going to be more and more multipolar, where the economic power is going to be more and more dispersed throughout the world. Asia is very much part of this changing configuration of the world economy. And as I mentioned, we are made up of 4 large economies and the ASEAN economies, which Malaysia is part. We believe that there's tremendous potential for increased economic and financial connectivity between Asia and Turkey. And this will unlock further potential for our economies to remain on our growth trajectory. Much still needs to be done, of course, to ensure the quality of this growth, which this morning so much was discussed. And this is what we want to pursue, that a growth that is inclusive, that is private sector driven, that takes into account the effects on the environment. And this will ensure the sustainability of our future. Thank you very much.